the Atlanta Falcons are 16, and it is because of most picks after Bijan. This was a bad pick. I know that was mocked a bunch late, but we just didn't want to believe it because look, you can say he's the best prospect since Barkley. Barkley was a bad pick for the Giants. He hasn't worked out to be worth the selection that he was at. We've said from the get-go, the last time a first-round running back lived up to the draft selection, it was probably Christian McCaffrey. Edwards-Helaire certainly didn't. Najee Harris hasn't. Now, whether that's the offensive line's fault or not, it doesn't matter. Leonard Fournette didn't live up to the monumental hype he had as Adrian Peterson too. And Josh Jacobs is debatable. He had a great season last year, but before that, he hadn't done too much. I mean, he was good, but never like an elite guy.
But it's not even living up to the hype. Like Jerry Jones literally came out days before the draft and said we should have never taken Zeke at 4.
Yeah,
and then Arthur Smith is like, "Oh, this is a great idea. Let me take a running back at 8."
Yeah, this has nothing to do with Bijan. He was one of the better prospects in this draft, but running backs in general, it just doesn't work. And you had Tyler Algier, who was 1,000-yard or right around 1,000-yard rusher from the 5th round. And you might want to say, oh, well, he's trying to build his days of Tennessee. That's great. Tennessee hasn't won anything. They went to the playoffs, and when they got to the playoffs, at some point they got overmatched by a passing team. The days of riding a running back to the Super Bowl just seem to be over. And I just feel like there were so many other positions that could have been useful here. Their wide receiver room is awful. After Drake London, their number 2 is Matt Collins, and I know he had a decent year with the Raiders, but that doesn't mean he's good.
And then didn't take a single receiver, not even a dart throw on the 7.
Yeah, like this was. Now, we'll get to their other picks, but the Bijan is it just doesn't work out. And even if he becomes a top 10 back in the league, we won't be surprised if there's multiple players in the first round taken after him that would have suited the Falcons more. But in round 2, they went offensive lineman, which was definitely needed in Matthew Bergeron.
Yeah, Bergeron so he was a tackle at Syracuse, played both sides. I had him with the late second round grade, so this was a bit of a reach. But when you look at the interior of their line, Bergeron was someone that I made a note could kick inside. So it's probably there considering Jake Matthews is still there, and they just re-signed Caleb McGarry and Lindstrom this offseason. So they do build the line with him and Javon Gwynn later in the draft.
And in round 3, they went and got Zach Harrison. He was my favorite upside edge rusher, not counting as in day 2 or later. He's got an insane size, speed, height prospect. We had him very similar to Marcus Davenport coming out of UTEP. Yeah, right? Or UTSA. I can't remember.
UTSA, I think.
But either way, Harrison's athletic profile is through the roof. And Atlanta needed pass rushing depth, but for the people that projected it in the first round, it just wasn't worth it. So instead, they get an uber athletic. I think he's the guy that people think Tyree Wilson is. So he gets to develop behind Calais Campbell, behind Lorenzo Carter, behind Bud Dupree, behind Grady Jarrett, and he could be special in 2 or 3 years. Round 4, they did another great pick with Clark Phillips III, and round 7, DeMarco Hellams, another great pick.
I got to give the Falcons credit for a team whose secondary outside of A.J. Terrell was pretty much non-existent last year. They've done an unbelievable job of building up the secondary, bringing in Jesse Bates to play free. Personally, I think Hellams is an absolutely legit candidate to fight for that strong safety spot next to Bates. And Clark Phillips could use the year to develop, but they did bring in veteran Mike Hughes. So, I mean, could they use an outside corner?
Okuda.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up too. Is like you did trade for Okuda, but like his ability to stay healthy through the years hasn't been great. Could the Clark Phillips pick have been an outside corner? Possibly, but Phillips should slide in nicely in the nickel spot once he's ready to go.